All right, welcome in everyone to another deep dive. Today we're tackling SAP S4HANA, you know, S4H as the cool kids call it.
That's the one.
Yeah, and to guide us, we've got a really solid set of materials from the S4H Club. These guys have put together some really like step-by-step guides with screenshots and even some
And
exercises.
practical stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Really practical stuff. So we're going to try and pull out like the core essentials,
Mm.
logging in, finding what you need, and even getting into some of the basic procurement processes. So by the end of this deep dive, hopefully S4H will feel a little less, I don't know,
A little
mysterious.
less daunting, maybe.
Yeah, daunting. There you go. Perfect word.
Yeah, this is all about laying that foundation.
Absolutely.
And the materials start right from the beginning. With that initial login, you'll need your client, user, password, all that. And then you get that first-time password change prompt.
Oh, of course. The good old change your password.
Yeah, gotta love that, right? But one thing I found interesting is that you can actually have like multiple sessions open at the same time, though they don't really specify a limit.
Oh, interesting. So you could be, jumping between different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's handy.
Now, figuring out how to navigate around, that's always the first challenge. And these S4H Club folks, they've done a nice job of like connecting the dots between those transaction codes.
Yeah.
Like FD03 or ME21N. You'll see them all over the place.
Yeah, you always hear those thrown around. Like, what even are those?
Right, exactly. But they actually correspond directly to the menu paths in the system.
Oh, okay.
So, if you drill down through the menus, so you go from accounting, then to financial accounting, then to customers, then to master data, and finally to display, the system actually shows you that FD03 is the transaction code that gets you there directly.
Oh, that's clever. So if you learn your way around the menus, then you pick up the codes along the way.
Exactly. It's like learning those local shortcuts instead of always using the main roads.
I like that analogy.
Now, one of the most helpful things I found, and they highlight this in the materials, is that F1 key. If you ever hit a field, you're like, what in the world is this? You just press F1, boom, help text pops up.
Yeah.
It gives you explanations and even links to more in-depth stuff in the SAP library.
Oh, wow. So it's like context-sensitive help right there in the moment.
Right there, yep. Like having a little expert on standby.
Love it. And they talk about F4 too.
Right.
What was that one for?
Oh, F4 is your friend when you need to find valid entries for a field. So say you're looking for a customer, but you don't remember their number.
Which, let's be honest, is most of the
Well,
time.
most of the time, exactly. But you know their name is, like Becker something. You can just type in Becker and hit F4,
Yeah.
and it'll show you all the matching customer names and numbers.
Well, that's so much easier than trying to guess or remember.
Right. Way more intuitive. And if you go a little deeper with that F1 help, there's a button for technical info. And that's where you find something called a parameter ID.
Parameter ID. Okay, that sounds a little,
A little techie.
yeah, a little techy.
It is, but it's super powerful. So they give the example of BUK, which is for company code. And this is where those parameter IDs become really useful because you can use them in your user profile under System, User Values, and then Own Data to set default values for fields.
Wait, so I could make it so that my company code is always pre-filled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Saves you a ton of time.
Yeah.
You can also set your preferred language, decimal notation, date formats, all that. And the cool thing is, by standardizing these defaults using parameter IDs, it can lead to more consistent data across all the different users.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a personal preference thing. It's a good practice for data quality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's both. Now, another thing they highlighted was creating favorites. Just like bookmarking websites, you can bookmark frequently used transactions.
Oh, nice. And you can organize them, right? Into folders and stuff?
Yep. And you can even save internet addresses. It's like
Yeah.
making your own little personalized launchpad within S4H.
I love that. So much more efficient. And is that where you can set that initial transaction too? Like the thing that pops up right when you log in?
That's right. So if you have like one main task you do all the time, you can set that to launch automatically.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, now let's move into procurement. That's a big one.
Yeah, a core process for sure. And they focus on the flow for stocked items. So, the things you keep in your inventory. Generally, it's a three-step process.
Mm-hmm.
You create a purchase order, then you record when the goods arrive, and then you process the invoice from your vendor.
Makes sense. And that three-way match is important, right? To make sure everything lines up and you're not paying for things you didn't receive.
Huge for control, yeah. Now, creating the purchase order, or PO, that uses the NE21N transaction, you got to specify the vendor, of course. They use the example of TK500H hashtag, but you'd use your actual vendor code. And then there's organizational data like your purchasing organization, purchasing group, and company code.
Okay, and just to be clear, like company code is basically your legal entity, right? And purchasing organization is what? The department that handles buying stuff.
Yeah, you got it. And then you add in all the details of what you're actually buying. The material, like they use TRM one attach tag as an example, the quantity, the delivery date, all that good stuff.
Makes sense. So then once the stuff shows up, you got to record that, right?
Yep, that's where the goods receipt comes in. You use the MyGo transaction for that. Super important for updating the history on the purchase order and also for keeping your inventory levels accurate.
So you're not selling stuff you don't actually have.
Exactly. And they walk through an example where they receive 100 pieces of this TRM1 hashtag material based on a specific delivery note.
Okay, and then last but not least, the invoice.
That's right. Invoice verification. Transaction MRO. So you plug in all the info from the vendor's invoice, like invoice number, they use the example REA1 hashtag tag, and the system helps you compare that against the purchase order and the goods receipt. Make sure everything matches up.
It catches any discrepancies.
Exactly. And again, it keeps that purchase order history nice and tidy.
So it's all about that documentation trail, right? Transparency.
Absolutely. And, underpinning all of this is master data. We touched on it a bit earlier, but they go into more detail in these materials. You've got your material master records, like the one they use, for example, TRM2 tag, some kind of front light, and then vendor master records like TK500 B tag, which is apparently for a vendor called Rash Graph, something or other.
Gotcha. And these master records, they're basically like the central source of truth for all the key details about your materials and vendors, right?
Precisely. Everything from descriptions and units of measure to, purchasing info, accounting data, payment terms, all that. And it's all organized by different levels, like client, company code, purchasing organization, even down to the plant and storage location.
So it's all very, very structured and organized.
Very much so. And that's why it's so important to get it right,
Mm-hmm.
because a small error in master data can really mess things up downstream.
Yeah, that cascading effect. So let's recap. In this deep dive, we've walked through the first steps in navigating S4H, those initial logins, finding your way around. We talked about how to personalize the system, make it work for you with favorites and default values and all that. And then we went through the basic steps in a procurement process, from purchase order to invoice verification. And of course, we touched on the all-important master data.
And what's really interesting to me is how interconnected all of this is. I mean, think about it. A tiny change in a vendor's master record, like say their payment terms change, that seemingly small thing can ripple through the entire procurement process, and it could even impact other areas of the business that you might not expect.
Whoa, yeah, that's a really good point. It's like a butterfly effect almost.
Right. And that makes me wonder, what other seemingly small details in a system like S4H, what other little tweaks or changes could have these surprisingly big consequences? Something to think about.
Absolutely. Food for thought. Well, on that note, we'll wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring.